Okay, my name is Mike Wigington. I'm a soil scientist, and we're out here in southern Carroll County on a beautiful day in September, and we're going to go through these sites that we judged for the soil judging contest. This is our first site. Some of the things to keep in mind on this one: at this site, the soil is calcareous below 36 inches. We're going to be judging the parent material from 10 inches to 30 inches. This is not a flat landform. There's weak soil development in the soil profile. Okay? And okay, on this one, we're fairly close to a stream down this direction, and the landowner told us that he has seen water in this area over a person's head. So that's one indication that this would be a floodplain. Also, we marked on the site card weak soil development, and as you go down through the soil profile, you'll see very little development. As you should know, floodplain soils are young soils. They have not had time to form through soil development, and so you're going to have a lot of weak development in these soils. Another indicator of that, on this one, so based on that, the parent material is going to be alluvium. Where we have the slope stakes set and it's fairly level out here, it's going to be 0 to 2%. Based on all that information, the only choice you have is the floodplain. On this one, if you rub the soil, wet it up, I think you're going to come up with a Tamoyar 3-3, which is going to put it into the black category for the soil surface color. In a site like this, on a floodplain, we're not really going to be dealing with previous erosion, so this one is going to be none to slight on the erosion. As far as the surface and subsoil textures, again, little soil development, and so we have silt loam in the surface, which is medium, and we've also got silt loam textures all throughout the soil, which is going to be medium in the subsoil as well. I couldn't find any wetness characteristics in this whole soil profile, so that's going to be a well-drained soil, and there's no limiting layer within 40 inches on this soil profile. If you look around a little bit in this soil profile, there's a couple more indicators of what you might find, and I see at least 2 spots in this soil profile, probably right in this area and one down in this area. It looks like some kind of crayfish or some kind of shell that's in the profile, so that would give you a pretty good idea that this would be a floodplain. Okay, that's it for this one. Okay, Mike Wigington, Carroll County, site number 2. Go through the site card first. This is going to be a home site. It's calcareous below 50 inches. The parent material should be judged between 20 and 30 inches on this site. It's not a flat landform, and there's not weak soil development. Okay, as we go through the characteristics on the scorecard, on this one, I believe, if I remember right, yes, we gave you the parent material because this one is outwash, and there was really no way to distinguish this from being something else. If you go through all the possibilities on the site card, weathered bedrock, we don't have that here. Aeolian sand, that's not here. lush. There's too many stones and stuff even on the surface, so we wouldn't want to call this lush. It's not a floodplain, so it's not alluvium. It's not a local overwash, but it could be till or outwash. In this case, it's outwash, and since we don't have any sand and gravel yet showing up in the soil profile, we gave it to you, and it's outwash parent material. On this one, we have the slope stakes set out here. It's probably going to be about 1%, so it's going to be 0 to 2% slope. Based on that, since it's not on a flat, we're going to have an outwash lacustrine swell. The color on the surface, I had a 10YR 3-4, which is going to end up being brown. On the erosion, I didn't see any significant erosion in this site, so it's going to be none to slight. On the surface texture, silt loam, pretty common in this area, and the subsurface texture in this one is going to be moderately clay. The surface texture is medium over moderate clay. Probably going to have clay loam textures in this one. I couldn't find any wetness characteristics, no modeling or anything like that, depletion. So this is going to be a well-drained soil, and to the bottom of the pit, greater than 40 inches, we're not going to have any kind of limiting layer, and so this is going to be no restrictions. That's it for site number 2. Okay, Mike Wigginton again, site 3, Carroll County. Fun fact for the day, we're in a popcorn field. Okay, site card wise, on this site, this is going to be a home site. We found that it's calcareous between below 32 inches, and we want you to judge parent material between 32 and 42 inches. It's not a flat landform, it's sloping here, and it's definitely not weak soil development. This is an interesting soil. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. Based on the indicator of where we wanted you to judge the parent material, this is going to be glacial till. Where we have the slope stakes, it's going to end up being 3Bs. The answer is 3 to 6% slope. And so that's going to put it into an upland hill slope. The color on the surface, similar to the last site where we were, it's brown on the surface, the color. I came up with a 3-4 color on that. From what I could tell, there's certainly not the whole 8 inches that might be typical for like we had on the last site, and there may be a little bit of subsoil mixing, so I would call this one moderate on the previous erosion. Like the last 2 sites, silt loam on the surface, so that's going to be a medium surface texture. In this one, in the subsoil layers, you're going to have silty clay loam, sandy clay loam, so you're going to have moderately clay in the subsoil. This one, again, I'm not seeing any wetness features. One thing to keep in mind on this site, when it dries out, there's a lot of colors in here that could look like 2-chroma. They could look like wetness features, but when you wet those up with your water bottles, they're going to fade out. There's probably a lot of 5-3 colors rather than 5-2s, which would be an indicator of wetness. On this one, this is the surprise for some, but others will be tuned right into it. At 32 inches, we have dense glacial till. And from what the scorecard, the rules say this year, If it's calcareous and it's till, then it's dense. And so this might not be considered right at the top of 32 inches, but as we go down a little bit deeper, it definitely gets into dense glacial till at this site. As you look at this site, especially starting 7-8 inches, you're seeing a lot of reddish colors. You're seeing stones. There's sand content. That's all indicator of outwash soil. But in this soil, since there's so many stones and stuff in the surface, we wouldn't consider that as lust, but this is going to be outwash over glacial till. So I like to call them two-story soils. This is going to be outwash over glacial till. So that's it for site number 3. Okay, Mike Wigginton, Southern Carroll County, site number 4. This is an interesting site. One tip-off to a farm that is mostly really well-drained soils, but if anybody knows what this is a piece of clay tile. And the landowner said that they actually put some plastic perforated tile in this. This is a piece of old clay tile. So this is one of the few wet spots or wetter spots on this parcel here. So going through the site card, in this one, calcareous below 40 inches, that's below the bottom of the pit. We wanted you to judge the site material or the parent material from the surface down to 14 inches. This is not a flat landform. It's a little bit deceiving. We're right on the edge of a waterway, which has some artificial slope to it, but we set the slope stakes up so that they're indicate what the actual site is. There is weak soil development, but with a caveat. It's just in the upper portion of this soil. For the purposes of this, exercise, we decided that we needed to give 2 pieces of information. The surface is brown. It's a 10YR43, and even though we don't have 20 inches to meet the criteria, we're going to call this local overwash. So, based on that information, let's go through the site card. Local overwash, the caveat being that it doesn't have 20 inches of overwash material. It's probably closer to 14 inches. And also the underlying darker horizon that would be the buried soil, it's not as dark as we see in some of these situations, but I think that is what this is. It's a buried soil. That's actually what the soil mappers mapped it as, and I think they got it right from that standpoint. On this one, in the real slope outside of the waterway, is 0 to 2%. It's a little bit pushing it into that situation, but we call this a fill depression, just because of the local overwash that we gave on the site card. As we indicated, we told you that it was brown on the surface. On a site like this, I see no indications that there's any erosion taking place here. It's probably adding more in than it is taking it off. So it's none to slight here. Surface texture on this, it's really friable silt loam on the surface, which would come out with a medium surface texture. Down below, I checked, sometimes in these profiles, you could possibly have a clay subsoil texture, but I don't think we have that in this case, and so it's moderately clay. I was finding mostly silty clay loams down there. On this one, I would have liked to have called it somewhat poorly drained, but it was kind of a hard cell in the upper portion of having the between 10 and 18 inches for having grays, but definitely from 18 to 30 inches there's gray colors. A little bit deeper there's probably even dominantly gray colors in the matrix. There's no real limiting layer within 40 inches on site, so that's no restrictive features on this one. So I hope this was a good challenge for you. This one would be typical of some of the varied soils that we see. It may not be the most typical landscape position that you would notice that in, but the farmer, when he was telling us we were looking for a site that might have poorly drained or somewhat poorly, he said he didn't have much to offer. But then when we came to this site, he said, well, we did put a tile in here a few years ago, so he knew what he was dealing with, and he largely dealt with it. And I think farther into the cornfield, there would be more of a depressional area that shows up, and that's what they were trying to deal with. And they've done a good job with the waterway and the drainage. This doesn't look like it causes them any problem. So, hope you enjoyed the contest.